Hey everyone, thanks for joining me again on my YouTube channel. This is HMGM, How to Model a Gold Mill in 27,000 Easy Steps. Today we're going to try and cover about 1,000 or so of those steps on our way to getting the foundation done so that we can build on it. And then we'll show a little bit of the fun stuff that starts to come after that. Now, we've been getting this kicked off really slowly because, a lot of it was guesswork, a lot of it was measurement from Google Earth, things like that. Well, we finally got into the mill a while ago, and we recently published that episode on our channel, link in the description. And then, as a result of that, we were able to start pulling out details that we just couldn't see from our earlier photos or had kind of overlooked because they were there but they weren't up close or whatever. Anyway, let's go ahead and get the foundations to a point where we can actually start building on them. What's that going to take? Step over into the workshop and let's see. After our last build episode, we foolishly believed that we had our foundation work finally completed. So we continued experimenting with weathering effects using a combination of weathering powders and spray paint. Additionally, we started looking at ways of scattering rock and debris using track ballast material from a model railroad supply and random sand collected from outside. Our early efforts were based around epoxy as shown here, but later we switched over to Mod Podge craft glue with better results. However, before we got too far down this path, we unexpectedly found the mill open during a late fall visit one year and happened to have enough of our camera equipment in the car to get detailed photos and video footage of the complete interior layout and its equipment. And while we were glad to get it, it showed us, yet again, that we had missed major details on how the foundation was constructed. This time, fortunately, we've got enough that we can proceed forward with finishing the foundation and building on top of it. When we toured the mill, we finally got photos and videos of what appears to be some sort of floor drain complex down here on the bottom. In fact, it looks like it's the final tailings drain out of the mill. So everything that's rejected from here goes through this floor drain and then drops out underground somewhere to a drain pipe or culvert and gets discharged in the ponds downhill. I had to draw it up in the CAD model I've got going, and now we're going to replicate it here on the real model. Only thing is down at the front of the mill here, it's going to cut down into a structural piece I'd rather not mess with. Fortunately, in the real mill, that area is still covered up by boards, so I'm not going to actually cut it all the way out. I'm just going to make a channel deep enough that I can put those same boards in it, and it won't be visible in the finished one. It'll just look completely natural. So that's what I'm getting after now. Let's see how it turns out. going to go ahead and give this a base layer of gray with a little bit of black mixed in. That way anything that shines through just kind of looks like old concrete. And there'll be plenty of weathering effects going over this, but that way if something breaks through or shows through, it's covered. It's not just bare wood down there. I've also got this bucket down here of stuff that I'm using for sand and rock and things from actual mine sites. This yellow stuff is tailings waste. I got it from the very surface of the tailings pile, so I'm not too worried about it being toxic anymore. Usually that stuff leaches out, which is exactly why it's a problem. It gets into the water supply. Dig farther down in though, and whatever's down there probably still has a lot of arsenic and things like that in it. That montage should provide a refresher on how we have been doing our concrete process, so to save time, we'll skip around a bit going forward, but it's all pretty much the same thing. The next thing we notice in our footage of the mill is that the three main levels below the ore bin all have concrete lips in the range of 4 to 6 inches in height surrounding the perimeter. In retrospect, this makes sense. These lips allow the wall sill plates to sit above the main floor, which helps prevent decay, and also turns the floor areas into basins that direct the water flow toward the drains. In a wet mill process, pretty much everything is about water management in some way or another. And in the decades before OSHA and MSHA, when the Santiago produced most of its bounty, nobody was too concerned about the hazards of an open wet floor. It was as good a place as any for runoff and overflow to be collected and drained. We did finish the base trim later, but first took a mental health break to work on more weathering effects, which tap a more creative streak and, in our opinion, are more relaxing to work out. While the inside of the mill feels mostly grayish-brown and dusty, parts of the mill have developed strong coloration patterns anywhere that water drains slowly enough to leave mineral deposits. These appear to be mostly iron and sulfur, variously producing reddish-orange, yellow, and black trails. We wanted to replicate these as closely as possible to how they show up in the abandoned mill today. Another weathering effect worth having are settling cracks in the foundation. We have positively identified 10 major clefts in the face walls, and all are replicated in the same way. Sketch a pencil line, gouge the surface with sharp tools, use a pencil or fine point marker to darken the channel and add depth, then modify with weathering powders. Later, all of these effects were sealed variously using Mod Podge craft adhesive or a matte spray lacquer, or both. During our Santiago tour, we finally accessed the top corner room of the mill. We did find 3 large foundation blocks packed with stabilizing fill, which probably supported the mine compressor at some point. We'll need to replicate those foundations, but first, another discovery. It seems we short-sheeted the bed when we built the back wall. It apparently extends out another 4 feet or so. This wall structure is not visible inside the ore bin, so with these updates we're now fairly sure it's correctly scaled to a reasonable margin of error. Well, now I need to do some weathering, but fits right in. And I guess it actually makes sense once I had a chance to get into that room and realize how far over the wall went, because 9 inches exactly in scale. Here to here, 8 3/4. So it's very possible that in the actual mill, if I could measure everything and get this exactly to scale, that this would be a perfect square. But now we need to do some more weathering effects, and then go ahead and get these put up in here, roughly like that. And from what I could tell, I'm almost a little worried that these stuck out farther than I thought, but I don't have any exact measurements in there. I just know they come to about here, and the stairway for this extends over this wall right here, so it's going to be coming down like this, and then the ore bin is over here. Before getting those fully finished, more issues appeared as we continued to study our photo and video footage. Another discovery, made while wandering on the lowest floor, was that the inset we had previously retrofitted into the model does not drop all the way to the next floor. So we cobbled lightweight lumber scraps and filled that in, and then finished it in concrete effects. Also of interest is that this section appears to have been a retrofit in the original mill. There's evidence that the wall was knocked out later instead of being included in the original pour. So we replicated that effect. Then we realized that our foundations for the rake classifier are not independent sections, but are attached to the nearby ball mill foundations. So those had to come out, be rebuilt, and then replaced. We weren't pleased with the quality of our floor drain on this level and took the opportunity to clean that up at the same time. Next, by comparing the relative location of the flotation level floor drain to the flotation cell foundations, we discovered it needed to be moved over by an inch on the model, or about 2 feet in real life. So we moved that too. The final location is centered laterally in the overall foundation, same as the drain on the crushing level, which in retrospect just makes sense. There was a missing notch in the ball mill foundation here. There was a missing drainage basin in the bottom level over here. And just when you think you've got them all,
but I'm not done yet.
We noted irregularities in the flotation foundations on the side of the shaker table. These look like more rework within the history of the mill itself, notched back with a sledgehammer to make room for a revised equipment layout. Thankfully, this was most of the big stuff, and that meant we could start to have a little more fun with the detail work. Okay. I'm going to talk through what I'm trying to do here, although it's just going to end up over a montage. This will take several hours and probably 2 or 3 days to allow for some drying time between later stages. These foundations back here in the real mill are filled with some kind of rubble, probably just loose poured concrete. It's just there to add bulk so the foundations don't shake themselves apart. I'm going to cut some box shapes out of lightweight plywood that I've got kicking around, and use those to create an airspace so that we don't have to add any more material up here than is necessary to give the effect. Then on top of that, maybe some epoxy putty, I don't know, to get some large rocks put down. And then on top of that, we'll get everything secured, we'll fill it in with concrete effects or whatever we got lying around here. And then I'm going to use Mod Podge to do the final fill and be able to have loose gravel look like it's just lying around. Mod Podge is great for that. I'm going to dilute it down first, and then it'll take many hours to cure after that, but when it does, it'll shrink up a whole bunch. And so things will just look like they're sitting on the ground when they're actually being held pretty securely by the dried Mod Podge underneath. Well, hopefully you found that entertaining, and for the 10 of you who stuck around all the way to the end, here's your reward. A quick look inside where we are now. That's right, we've started the carpentry, so coming up soon, we'll start publishing episodes showing how all this unfolds, but it's starting to get good, and as we speak right now, the shaker table is well underway being constructed in there, and hopefully be done with that here in a couple weeks. In the meantime, thanks for joining us. We'll see you again next time, and stay safe out there in your exploring. Has anyone seen my phone?